CyberShorts Episode 4, Hair of the Dog, by Nick Burnette. Bone was a man in his 40s who loved a girl in her 30s. She didn't give him a reason to love her. That's just how sad and depressed Bone's life was. He wanted her, and for a while she liked it. Her name was Ness, and she knew Bone loved her. She spent time with him because he had money. She let Bone supply her with gifts, with drugs, with booze, and she didn't give him anything in return except her presence. She wanted to be a model, but it never happened, and she wasn't getting younger. Now she was bitter, and taking it out on Bone. She saw him as weak. She picked on him. Bone knew he was being used. He hated himself for it, hated his life, but a relationship with her was all he wanted. He kept hoping that, eventually, she'd come around. After all, they'd spent countless nights together in the throes of Purple Heart, an addictive sensory drug. A solid foundation for any relationship. Bone stirred on his plush foam mattress, angry to be awake. It was morning and the events of last night reverberated in his head, echoing with the drug's after effects. He grabbed a bottle of water from his nightstand. It was just water. He needed that sometimes. Ness had stayed the night, but she'd brought Steven. Steven was a loser, a total mooch, and now another person using him. Bone only wanted Ness there, but all of a sudden Steven was with her. Last night was the worst yet. Ness and Steven used his stash and then had sex on the floor, on his floor, right in front of him. It hurt, and he couldn't stop seeing it. She wasn't like this a few weeks ago. It was as if she was trying to hurt Bone. He'd spent his first few thoughts this morning telling himself it didn't matter. Bone got dressed and ignored the two of them still asleep on his living room floor and walked out of his apartment. His footsteps disappeared down the hallway towards the elevator. These apartments were upscale, and his rent showed it, but they hadn't fixed a blown air conditioner for almost a month. When he finally lumbered through his apartment lobby, complete with river paintings and one of those gas-fueled fireplaces, he stepped outside with one hand up to shield the sun. Ness and her moans haunted his thoughts. Steven had to disappear, for good. Things had to go back to the way they were, to before Steven was around. The sounds Ness made wouldn't stop playing in his head. They were trying to drive him mad. Bone chuckled. The gun in his bedroom drawer came to mind. That would definitely get rid of Steven. Don't tempt me, he thought. His apartment was close to Chinatown, and he could get Bao any time. He just had to turn down Maynard Street. Steven needed to disappear. Why was she doing this to him? Just a pull of the trigger. Bone wasn't usually like this, and yet, homicidal thoughts were with him today. The gun could make Bone disappear too. It should have disturbed him, but it didn't. He made a mental note that he must be going off the deep end now. What else could explain it? It didn't surprise him. He was a depressed junkie. He walked along a spit-roasting pig in the window, and it was barely breakfast, so that seemed unappealing. He entered Chow's Bows to an automated chime. An old Asian man nodded. He'd been a different type of Asian every time Bone had asked. Robotic arms whirred in the kitchen behind him, loading bao of various meats onto a conveyor belt that ran along the counter. Zhao Shihao, Bone said. It was Chinese, Mandarin if he remembered right. He'd started using different greetings to see which one Chow responded to. The old man smiled the same smile he gave yesterday when he had tried Alun Sawat. Good morning, Bone. Asado Bao? Bone stammered until realizing the answer was yes, and then nodded with a guilty smile. The old man grabbed 3 spottled bao. How they were spottled he didn't know, but the buns tasted sweeter, which worked perfectly with asado pork. Chow loaded them into a plastic carry-out bag and then resumed smoking his cigarette. Bone paid and left for the door. Hold on, wait, the old man said. Bone paused, wondering if he'd dropped something, or what else it might be. Chow walked up to him. Probably nothing. Talent agent. Looking for rugged, handsome man. I think of you. You call him, Chow said and held out a card. What? Bones' mouth hung to the side, unsure of which expression made sense. You call him. You have look. Rugged. Handsome. Hungover, maybe, Bone thought to himself. What kind of joke was this, anyways? It was a scam. He didn't know. It couldn't be real, whatever it was. He took the card and rammed it in his coat pocket before heading back to his apartment. When he returned to his abode, Stephen was still there, sitting on his couch, watching his television. He was relaxed and his shirt was off, but thankfully wearing pants, with a television remote in his hand. Bones' jaw tightened. Boom, bang, or did they pop? He shook his head. That was the third time he thought of the gun. He'd be better off grabbing Stephen by the hair and yanking him off of his couch. Bone took off his coat and went to his bedroom. He then heard a toilet flush, which meant Ness was still there too. He'd have to calm down before she tried talking to him. He collapsed on his bed and stared into the wall-sized mirror. Colored track lighting illuminated with his entry. He switched the lights off and waved a hand to open the curtains instead. He stared out the window to the courtyard below, wishing he could punch something. Why did Ness do this to him? Using him was one thing, but bringing Stephen over was too much. He turned to the dresser where his gun was, his eyes drilling holes through the drawer. No, he'd go to prison and then be executed. The thought of it sounded... He heard Ness in his kitchen complaining about being hungry, and before he knew it, his hands were in fists. She expected Bone to make them breakfast. He couldn't take his eyes off the drawer, and everything in his field of vision went black. His thoughts floated above an ocean of fire. He should care about prison. He should care about himself, his life. He had decent money. There was supposed to be happiness here. Sure there was, with artificial help, like Purple Heart. Speaking of which, he grabbed some pills. Pills, vapors, injections. There were a few ways to take the stuff. I can't be this bad of a junkie. It's not even 9 a.m. yet, he scolded himself before swallowing a pill. He hadn't known joy in years without some kind of help. He pushed the gun away from his thoughts. This hangover wasn't going away, but the pills would help. Stephen needed to leave before he grabbed that gun and made him. He heard them talking and slapped his hands over his ears. The ocean of fire could almost touch his thoughts. A minute later, Ness was inside his bedroom, yelling at him. He wasn't sure how he'd lost track of time, but 1 minute she wasn't there, and suddenly now she was. When the hell are you making breakfast? She demanded. Bone's face waited without expression. And what the hell is this? She asked, holding the card in her hand, the one Chow had given him. She'd gone through his pockets looking for drugs, but found that instead. It's nothing, Bone said, his voice quiet. What was that? It's nothing, he said again, a little louder. Was somebody looking for me? She asked, a little excited. Her dream was getting in the way of reality. He would have said yes on any other day, just to see her happy. No, they want me, he said, and watched her expression melt away. She looked at him as if he'd said the most ridiculous, the most impossible thing in the world. The pill might be kicking in. He loved Ness, but he knew he was about to say something he couldn't take back. She saw his pills laying out and snatched a handful of them. Stephen and I are getting hungry. He stood, motionless, as she exited his bedroom. Psst! Hey, Bone! He swore the gun had called his name. A harsh whisper, he swore he heard it. Just a minute, he answered. He opened the drawer and saw it waiting for him. He picked it up, the weight of it nice and proper in his right hand. He flipped a button to charge the battery on his gun, a Coiler 7.3 model that fired large caliber rounds. He didn't remember opening his bedroom door. Maybe Ness opened it. He'd lost more time just now. His reality was blurred between the Purple Heart and the talking gun. Ness was yelling at him, calling him names. He had no idea what she was saying. She went silent upon seeing the gun. Ha! I told you so, the gun whispered to him. The Purple Heart was synthetic and worked nicely through his blood and nervous system. Exciter aminos were the cherry on top, and at this moment, he felt incredibly good. Stephen was holding his shirt as if it were a shield. He was frozen in the living room. Bone had their attention. He had their utmost respect. Why? Because he had this gun in his hand. They didn't respect him one bit before this. Hungry? He didn't really aim as he lifted the gun, just a lazy bend at the elbow, but it fired and the blast ripped through Stephen and flung him against the wall, leaving a red mist. He turned his attention to the girl of his dreams. Ness was shrieking, but he couldn't hear her. She looked so small, so pathetic. You're hungry too. This time, he used the coiler pistol like a hammer, striking her in the face until his arm ached and he was sweating. Eventually, he sat against the wall, and the events that occurred began sinking in. It didn't feel real, yet. He'd been so down, so upset, so depressed for months, a drone in an endless life of dread. He looked around at the kitchen, staring at the spattered blood, realizing what he had done. Damn, this felt different. He walked into his bathroom, greeted by his colored neon lights, and he stared at himself in the mirror. Didn't know you had it in you, you sick bastard, he smiled. He'd never done anything like that before. He was still waiting for the guilt to kick in. How long until the police showed up? He had never been to prison before. This was the best he'd felt in a long time. He felt alive. Suddenly he was aware of the card missing from his pocket. He washed his face and hands, changed his clothes, and then found the card in Nessa's front pocket. A minute later he called that Talon agent. He didn't remember what he'd said on the phone, but now he had an appointment tomorrow morning. A modeling appointment. Who'd have thought? He wouldn't stay here tonight. He'd stay in a hotel. Ness and Stephen could just sit here. They liked using his place so much, they could use it a while longer. Bone took the public light rails across town, the anti-grav subways that worked in tunnels beneath the city. He rented a hotel room in view of Southern Tower, home of a large and powerful corporation. Much of the old technologies had been lost during the war, back in his 20s. Thanks to Southern Company, things were coming back. Or that's what their advertising campaigns promised. The light rails were a good example, but he couldn't think of others at the moment. He entered Southern Tower. Its unique entrance simply went from outside to inside, full of polished marble and comfortable couches. The woman behind the reception desk was more beautiful than any woman he'd ever seen, and it was funny because that didn't mean anything to him. He was still in a peaceful place since getting rid of Stephen and Ness. He attended the meeting. It went well, and his attitude seemed to impress everyone. He wasn't some desperate model willing to do anything to land a gig. He acted like they could take it or leave it, which must have been some powerful reverse psychology. The next day, he was in a studio, in front of cameras, modeling. He'd never done that before. He went to bed that night at the hotel feeling loved, feeling important. He'd forgotten what that felt like, and he dreamed about it atop bleached hotel sheets. The photographers appreciated him, appreciated his talent. They told him he'd be a star. The next day, he was in another room with holograms and a tropical background, doing his second photo shoot, when the doors burst open. He heard the camera click one last time. It must have captured the look on his face. When he saw the detectives and the uniformed policemen, he sat down. 3 days? That's how long before someone must have checked out the smell coming from his apartment. As they slammed his face into the floor and cuffed his arms painfully behind his back, he realized he had not taken a Purple Heart in days. Suddenly he wanted one.